Um, in so many words, he goes, "You're gonna convince yourself of some mental narrative, some BS mental narrative to determine whether you're good at your job or not." And I was offended. I was like, "That was a little hard." I don't have to really say it like that. But do you know, before we got on the team plan, I put my black vest back on and took the white
Yeah, that's a good idea.
off. I was like, "Wait a minute, did he just Jedi mind trick me by pissing me off?" I think he did.
I still don't even think he was talking about you.
He was making. I get what he was doing, but I don't know. I felt like it.
You mentioned sorry, I'm choked up about it.
It's emotional.
Yeah, it is emotional hearing you talk about it. I have this constant problem. I need feedback from people. I've tried different things. I get these frogs in my throats, and it happens all the time with talking. Sorry about that. You mentioned the F Nebraska chant before the game. You guys were hitting on that last week with Damon. I think you asked me about it, like sort of the animosity Minnesota has for Nebraska football.
I was trying to prepare people.
Yeah. And I think that played into this too. I mean, that Minnesota was a team that came to play like Nebraska had stole their girlfriend.
Yep.
And Nebraska was still feeling pretty good about itself from that comeback over Maryland. The guys sort of admitted that in interviews, this week, and it just wasn't quite the right approach. I thought Lindenmeyer had a good quote. It was like, we kind of came like we're ready to put on a show. And there's something that's okay about that vibe. But as he mentioned, it's like we needed to go to that game like we're ready for a fight, like we're going into the ring. And Minnesota was like they came out just with that extra vigor, and Nebraska was a little bit like Clubber Lang in the second fight in Rocky III.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to some of those guys, and at some point, I don't know if you've ever been in those situations where you're in it real time and you can't really believe that it's happening. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of how they found themselves.
Yeah. Do you think so? I mean, what do you make of like Rhule had that comment about where it was 7-6 at halftime, and sort of the disappointment and seeing his team disappointed. I guess that I took it as like that you're sort of in that fight, like maybe you thought it was going to be easier. As someone who's been a player and a coach, like what do you think about like how you can shift that mindset? Because it did bring me back a little bit to last year, with the discussion we've had all off season, honestly, about that UCLA game, which was a game where it wasn't out of hand by any means. You didn't have a good first half. You're disappointed, of course, that you're down on the scoreboard, but it's right there to go get. And when he said that on Monday, it did bring me back to that scenario. And I was, I have to admit, that's a hurdle I kind of was hoping the Huskers were over, especially given the success they had in a couple earlier games this season against Cincinnati and Maryland coming back, even Michigan State, where you have to stare adversity in the face and you have an answer. So I guess hearing that and sort of watching the second half transpire as it did is what surprised me the most.
So, two things. I said this last night to Jay Moore on Big Red Wrap Up. So you have to take the good and take the bad with last year being last year.
Mm-hmm, right.
So this team's mindset is this year's team. This is our new mindset. So with that, I'm not sure how quickly or how experienced enough they are to flash back to UCLA. A lot of those guys weren't playing. A lot of those guys don't feel what the guys that were playing felt in that locker room. So I'm not sure it's that linear because a lot of it is intentional, right? It's like flush it. Then the other thing to that, BC, if I'm talking to these guys, I'm saying, okay, hey, listen, this was new for you to handle. You had to handle some success. We talked to you guys still about having warts, and there were things that we were going to do. Some of you guys don't really believe fat meat's greasy. Some of that's on us. Some of that is on you guys. Going forward, they just have to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Now this team can go next year or the next game or the next opportunity that, hey, we're only down one, and know what not thinking correctly does. I think they just had to put this part of the chapter in their new book. That's
I got you. Yeah, that's a good answer. We'll see. We could see if they ideally they get off to a better start and they're not dealing with it right away this Saturday. But yeah, that's a way to look at it, and they're going to need to do that.
And listen, and you know what? They'll be able to prepare for Shavers and not in or out, or
Right.
Spindler with. And Jess said on the broadcast under her, she goes, I think it broke the skin. It might be a compound fracture. And I was too busy dry heaving under the table to even pay attention on whether it was or not. But you have the Spindler thing, you had the Pritchett thing, and these aren't excuses. They just aren't good enough yet to adjust to those things on the fly. And then you wake up and it's like, how did Barney only have one target? Like, how did we let them play 2-man and cover an inverted cover 2? Like there'll be all these things that they process through that will be paramount that they don't let happen again. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's got to be better.
Yeah. And it seems like they spent Sunday going over that with each other. And now we see what those sort of talks, did to the week. I know Dylan mentioned, even the players had a players only meeting. I don't want to go overboard with that. I think, that happens within a season. But it sounds like some truths were put on the table before guys, and also like how everybody understands things. And so we'll see how they process that and if that's useful to them going forward. So it's never a dull week around here. And this one is certainly, I mean, it's become to me like the game, every game is the game of the season, but like, it feels like the ripple effects from this game going forward are so huge. Like it's that type of game where you've got Emmett Johnson right after in the post game saying this is a crucial week for our program, like understanding on the spot what has to happen. And then, Matt Rhule saying this is that week where you have to stand up. And even the quote, of course, about, if we do these things again, then I would boo us, that sort of stuff. It's actually sort of a different dynamic to any week I've covered, and I've been doing it a bit.
When you're taking a look at kind of can you arrive at the same end game listening to Rhule, Coach Butler, and Coach Holgorsen? They were all very different in their pressers, but can you arrive at what you think the message is?
Yeah, I mean, the main takeaway is everybody, I think, was okay with criticism, both pointing a thumb back at themselves, but also like if someone directs it at them, understanding like, I did not do my job good enough. This guy didn't do his job good enough. And I think that's a good spot to be in, where you have at least that sort of culture where you can have honest feedback, and it's not everybody's going to get in their feels. I don't think it's that type of team where that's going to happen. Like if you had that type of team and you were softened like that, I think you'd be in real trouble right now, honestly, to have some of the candor that's been expressed. But I think we'll see. But I think this is the type of team that can deal with honest feedback. I mean, the film's the ultimate truth teller, and anything that anybody says shouldn't be harder to take than what that revealed from that game. And so, So I just think I think we've talked about this culture a lot when I've been on the show, and I think it is a good culture. I was a little bit disappointed in a way, mostly because of how that game Friday went, because I sort of didn't expect Nebraska to dip like that. But this is a chance for them on Saturday to show that is not us. That was an outlier to this season. This still could be, I mean, technically it could be a 10-2 season, but it could be 8-4, 9-3 type season, like about everybody predicted in the off season. What I was saying to our guys the other day is, everybody will predict like 8-4 in the summer. It's when you're in the car on the road to 8-4 during it that's not always that comfortable. People don't like some of the pit stops along the way, but hopefully this was just one of those ugly pit stops on the way to at least that sort of mark or better.
BC, do you think part of the frustration that we have as a team or as a fan base about this team is we tend to think situations are more static than they are, or maybe stable is the right word, or maybe permanent. Like when we think, hey, the culture set, that doesn't mean there can't be a bad culture loss. Or we think, hey, because like I know personally, I think I thought to myself on Friday, like I thought we were past this type of loss. And I was like, you're never past this type of loss, right? Like that's like it's always something that's can still happen to you. I mean,
Yeah.
DP brought up
Yeah.
like you coming off 94, 95, and 96 still happens, right? Like it's not like the culture wasn't set. It's just you're never
Yeah, like
that.
I mean,
Like it's always
it's not like we were prepared emotionally to play Texas. We weren't. Right? That's pretty good.
Like you so I like do you think that's part of the problem is we think it's just more permanent than it is? It's like always in an active state?
No, that's a good point, Ravi. I mean, that's why these next couple of weeks are so important, because you can kind of prove to what you're talking about that
You have to go find it again.
Yeah, you have that type of culture where you're like, yeah, that's not us. Let's go punch back now and do it with some authority. And they have the chance. Now, if they lay an egg Saturday, you know what it's going to be around here. It's going to get pretty tough. So this is a big one, and that's why Emmett recognized it 15 minutes after the game in a spot where guys sometimes don't on the podium, like what it's got to be and what it means to this program and this particular team. And I think it's also one of those deals where you have to, and Raiola mentioned this yesterday, like you got to think about all the work you've put in all those freaking months, like, at 6 a.m. for Saturdays like this. And you can't let one disappointment in a year in college football where it's all around you, where you're seeing teams everywhere, like have a high one week and a low the next week. Okay, you had your low. Now you got to go get your high, and play the type of football you're capable of. And I mean, I like that Rhule had that challenge, like the O-line, for instance. Like you should, you'd rather die than let your QB get hit. That sort of stuff's like got to ring in your ears going into a game like this, and to bring that extra juice that for whatever reason just was not quite there Friday. And it felt that way even in the first half when that game was not out of hand and was clearly in reach still.
And the interesting thing is, just in hearing you say that about the O-line, and like just in talking to some of the guys yesterday, like the guy that Coach Rhule was probably the hardest on was Dylan. And
sure.
And I think when you can coach one of your best players hard and in conjunction with what you say to the O-line or about your offensive coordinator,
and they can respond to it,
to the about the defensive coordinator and yourself, I can't. I'm just fascinated by what a couple of days reveals when everybody's held accountable. And because that's not the key. The key is allowing yourself to be held accountable. It's a lot of people can tell you what you didn't do and what you need to do.
But that's the ownership part. That is whether you take it or not.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Because I mean, there's a lot of bad narratives out there, and the fact that Dylan wants something a certain way, or he's running the show, like we're not even remotely scratching the surface on the dynamics between an uncle, a nephew, a brother, and a dad, right? Like we have no idea. I'm just glad that's not my family. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to process there. I mean, it's just a deal where I think you saw what I can speak on is just what you see up front and what guys say. And I think you saw a quarterback, especially yesterday. It's like he held himself accountable just like the other guys. And I think there's an understanding that all those sacks and certain things that have been discussed, they're not on one position group. They're not on this one guy. It's on everybody. And that's been said for a few weeks. And sometimes people roll their eyes about it, but I do think there's an understanding that. And now it's like, all right, you'll go fix it. They do have to go show that they can be that group that they were supposed to be and that they think they are. And, Dylan's a big part of that. I think there are parts where he's got to get it out a little quicker and see some things. And Dana Holgorsen admitted there's some things where he could help his quarterback out too. And so you had that sort of that talk yesterday about how everybody's got to not only see what they can do better, but see how they can help the person next to him do his part better as well.
You know what's funny is we act like what you're hoping happens is, I won't say we act like that's, if we don't like the way that a group is playing or a particular person is playing, and clearly Dylan is getting a lot of it, right, with the offensive line. Guys will say to themselves, like, if you think Dom isn't going to say, who's coaching this guy, right? And Coach Holgerson and Coach Thomas aren't going to say, well, we're coaching him, like we're like there's just this natural thing that happens where you don't want to be the reason for the treason, right? So you just have to give it a chance to see how it reveals itself. Like, there's obviously some things Coach Holgerson's going to say because it falls at his feet. You know what I mean? He's not going to stick his head in the sand.
Yeah,
you got to coach him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just want to see on Saturday this group come out, and you can tell there's a focus from the bat. I think it's going to be key, especially this week. When Matt Rhule was as candid as he was, even about the fans and how to maybe respond to this game and stuff like that. You don't want it to be a deal where you have those miscommunications and misassignments. That's what galled me the most sort of about Friday was like the opening script. When you had a miscommunication right off the jump, and it was just sort of a bad omen and also sort of a sequence of things to come. And, some of these sacks and some of the stuff is built on the miscommunication, just simple missed assignments, I think, where they've let people come free. So I think that's a big part early in this game, is that hopefully everyone's got dialed in where you see an offense that's very connected and fluid, and there's some success early. This crowd will get behind them if there will be that sort of all right, we're all in this together, and it'll turn into a loud stadium if Nebraska can produce early. Now it can go the other way too, and that's why this game's pretty interesting with all that's been said.
BC, do you think they might? We heard a little bit from Dana yesterday about how it's like, well, we call these run plays, but we put the pass option on there to give us do you think they might try and revert to some more just traditional run plays to make sure they're running the football?
Yeah, I kind of wonder about that. I know that there's obviously a benefit in having different options up there when you're at the line and stuff, and so you don't want to throw that all away. But there is that part where I thought it was almost the most interesting thing Rhule said Monday, and it was like viewed as like the 10th most interesting to a lot of people. But it was that part where he said what can we do when he's talking about the offense as opposed to
number one.
Yeah, as
what can we
opposed
do versus what we want to do?
No, yeah,
versus
basically
what we're good. No, what we're good at.
Oh, okay, yeah, what we want to do, what we're good at.
Oh, well, he said, what can we do? And then there's a part of it, I'm paraphrasing, but not this is really good versus that coverage is sort of like was part of that quote.
It's fascinating, BC, because clearly your offensive line are better run blockers. You have a really good running back, but some of your best offensive players are your wide receivers and your quarterback. So do you want to take it like that? We talked about this in the offseason.
Yeah, it's a fascinating.
That was always going to be a fascinating deal, and maybe this forces their hand because you can tell your quarterback, "Hey, listen, we need to protect you. We're gonna simplify. We're gonna modify. Yeah, I get it. You want to showcase this, that, and the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, while we get everybody back healthy, this is how it may have their hand forced because in the offseason, and maybe I was wrong, it seemed like they wanted to run the ball anyway.
Yeah.
They're better run blockers.
Yeah, the offensive line is.
The sequence that kind of I would highlight with this discussion is the first drive of the second half.
And they ran it down their throat.
Emmett rips it off that run. Remember, probably from our vantage point, we're kind of in that corner of the field in that press box. It's a cool setup they have actually, but Emmett goes for about 15 yards to Minnesota's 40, and it looked like he might house it for a second. Like they just got him. And that was a time where I know maybe you've got various run pass options you can do and stuff. That was the next play was the only touch of the game Barney got, by the way. It was the one in space where a gopher corner made a good tackle for a 2-yard gain, or he would have.
Then they dump it to him and he gets the good run. And then the next play is the shot they missed to Key.
Yeah, it was
then they get the sack, and it's like,
which was open, by the way. Like the,
Yeah.
And it's like
Like it was
screwed
open.
up, but you're right.
That's
That is an interesting series.
That's where the discussion's really interesting, because they actually had 2 plays right after the Emmett run that were there. Like they almost there, like could have been touchdowns, honestly, the one to Key especially. But then there is that thought, like, Emmett just ripped off that 15-yard run, and that guy's got a determination about him, especially in a game, like that. And maybe that's a deal where you look back and you say, I know I got these other things out there that can work. We're going to go back to that. But right now, this guy, just feed him again and again. And then the counter to it, an offensive coach would say, yeah, but we have a touchdown if our quarterback drops it in. That's why these things are always really interesting to me. And sometimes why I struggle to take a hard line take probably on some play calls, because I'll see what they saw was potentially there. But I also understand what Rhule's saying right now. It's like, what can we do? Like, and sometimes I think you just got to feed that hot hand. And Emmett Johnson to me right now is that guy as much as anybody on this offense.
That's our guy, Brian Christopherson, Husker247, BC. Great stuff as always. We appreciate the time.
Be sizzle, as I
Thanks,
like.
guys.